Welcome to the New York Power Authority and Canal Corporation Supplier Information Webinar. My name is Victoria Daniels. I'm the Manager of Supplier Diversity. I'll be discussing waiver requests, goal reductions, and good faith effort requirements today. The agenda will include New York State Executive Law 15A and 17B, waiver requests and goal reductions, good faith efforts, examples of unacceptable submissions, example of acceptable submissions, and getting it right. New York State Executive Law, Article 15A, Sections 310 through 317, governs the requirements for participation of MWBEs in New York State contracting. New York State Executive Law, Article 17B, governs the requirements for participation of SDVOBs in New York State contracting. NYPA and Canal as state authorities are required to assess each procurement subject to Executive Law 15A and 17B for diversity goals. If a procurement is found to meet the criteria, diversity goals may be included in the bid. Goal reduction and waiver request. If after making a good faith effort to solicit a diverse firm, a goal reduction and/or waiver request can be submitted. A goal reduction is the amount of diversity goal decreased from the original goal. A waiver request is defined as a waiver of diversity goal is requested in full or partial. Good faith efforts are the actions a supplier has made to solicit MWBEs and SDVOBs pursuant to 5 NYCRR Section 142-8 and 9 YCRR Sections 252 and respectively. Good faith efforts for each procurement may be different and dependent on the region and location of project and are determined prior to an RFP advertisement. See the attached waiver request form. The top of the form needs to be filled out with the information about the person requesting the form, the address, and the city and state. The solicitation number should be on there, whatever the goal was on the contract, the total amount of the waiver that's being requested, if it's a full or partial. Also, it should be signed and dated. The bottom half of the form is for the agency to fill out. The SDVOB form is filled out in a similar fashion. Unacceptable examples of good faith efforts include submitting an unsigned waiver request with no evidence of good faith efforts, submitting a signed waiver request with no evidence of good faith efforts, submitting a signed waiver request with an Excel spreadsheet of MWBE firms with no evidence of communication or response, no evidence of outreach to diverse firms. That means not submitting an Excel spreadsheet, but just submitting a waiver request. Statements that the cost to use a diverse firm is more costly than to use a non-diverse firm with no evidence. It shouldn't cost the authority any more money for you to reach out and utilize an MWBE or an SDVOB. If you're saying that it's going to cost the authority to use more money to use a diverse firm, you would have to submit some documentation that show that. Acceptable examples of good faith efforts. Signed waiver request with a letter on a company letterhead explaining why a waiver is being requested with evidence of good faith efforts. That includes outreach, advertisements in local newspapers, or maybe the Minority Commerce Weekly, or local magazines that have outreach to diverse businesses, email correspondence between the parties, Excel spreadsheets reflecting the search criteria or how the firms were selected, a signed waiver request with a letter on company letterhead explaining why a waiver requested, good faith efforts attached if applicable. Now, if it's only a signed waiver request with a letter on company letterhead explaining why a letter is requested, and it says good faith efforts if applicable, that could be that this is a sole proprietor. It's a small business and they wouldn't utilize diverse firm. They wouldn't utilize subcontracting, period, because they are the business. It's one person as a sole proprietor. It would be no reason for them to reach out to anyone because the goods or services that the authority is requesting would be that person. So it will be solely acceptable for them to not utilize subcontractors and for them to only provide a letter explaining that. Getting it right. Goal reduction and waiver requests can be submitted with the bid documentation prior to the contract end date or during the life of the contract. Goal reductions and waiver requests should not be submitted after a contract is ended. It must include signed request, a letter of explanation on letterhead, and good faith efforts if it's applicable. Thank you for attending this webinar. For additional information, please visit www.nipa.gov/procurement or contact Supplier Diversity at nipa.gov. Thank you again and have a good day.